Welcome back, viewer. You're tuned in to Killer Bites, your favorite weekly true crime delicacy. As you've seen on many episodes of this show, abuse seems to have no bounds. Today we dive into the tragic case of Isaiah Torres and the atrocities he endured at the hands of his own parents in his short 6 years on this earth. What punishment would you deem appropriate for your child after they snuck into some sweets? Would beating them and impaling them on a stick qualify? For Mauricio and Cathy Torres, it did. The ensuing saga of blame game, multiple trials, and familial involvement adds to the sick and terrible nature of this case. Warning, this episode's crime involves horrific harm to a child with gruesome details. Isaiah Torres, born Maurice Isaiah Torres, was born July 3rd, 2008 to Mauricio and Cathy Torres. He had two sisters, Madison, a year his senior, and a twin named Mackenzie. Both parents had children from previous marriages. Isaiah and his sisters would volunteer at the local Samaritan Community Center in Rogers, Arkansas. The director of the center said that Isaiah loved to break down boxes and get granola bars for his work. Isaiah was described as a fun-loving boy who loved helping out. Apparently, the children took their duties seriously. Isaiah and his sisters went to school at Ambassadors of Christ in Bentonville, Arkansas, where he attended as a kindergartner. A few of his teachers saw large bruises on Isaiah's body, so they took photos and reported them to the state hotline. They also noticed him stealing other children's lunches and taking food from the trash. It was noted that the Department of Health Services did do an investigation into the teachers' reports, but they were found to be unsubstantiated, and the case into any abuse was closed. The following year, the kids were pulled out of school to be homeschooled instead. Around 11 p.m. on March 29, 2015, Cathy Torres called 911 when she found Isaiah unresponsive. When medics arrived, they found him lying on his back, not breathing, with multiple puncture wounds, scrapes, bruises, and lacerations on his body. He was rushed to the nearby Mercy Hospital, but unfortunately, just after midnight on March 30th, 2015, Isaiah was pronounced dead after paramedics and doctors tried to provide life-saving support. He was only 6 years old. The doctor who tried to save him said they never got a heartbeat once he arrived at the hospital. They did notice, beyond the extensive injuries already mentioned, a diamond-shaped mark on his stomach, many lacerations to his head, and blood near his rectum. When investigators questioned the parents that night, they said they had just gotten back from a camping trip and had no idea what was wrong with their son, nor knew of any prior medical disruptions to his health. Torres told the doctor that the wounds on little Isaiah's back were from a chemical burn he received in 2014 and was said to have been treated at the Arkansas Children's Hospital. However, when records were checked there, no such treatment was found. When she was brought in for questioning, Isaiah's mother said when they arrived home from a camping trip midday the day before, he was complaining of a stomachache, for which she gave him Pepto-Bismol and he went to sleep. She claimed he walked into the house just fine, took a shower, and laid down in the master bedroom. She left the room he was napping in for a short while, and when she returned, he wasn't breathing. She said the area around his eyes looked a little dark, but he was constantly running into doorknobs. She also claimed that she never saw her son shirtless, so didn't know about the wounds to his body. Officers called her bluff though, saying this was clearly a case of child abuse, to which she denied. When asked if her husband had anything to do with his injuries, her only reply was, "I didn't do it." She claimed they rarely even spanked the kids and that they loved their children. During Torres's questioning, he said Isaiah had vomited and had some diarrhea after complaining about a tummy ache coming home from the trip. He also denied any knowledge of his son's injuries, and contrary to telling the doctor about the chemical burns on his back, he told police, "You have to ask my wife about that." He echoed what his wife said about his son being clumsy as a possible explanation to his injuries. After the detective took a short break, he returned to the interrogation room to find Torres's demeanor had turned paranoid. He began saying to the officer that he thought they were cutting a deal with his wife to pin his son's death on him. He said, "Don't ask me to betray my wife." The next day, the daughters were taken by DHS and questioned individually. Madison and Mackenzie were 7 and 6 years old at this time. The girls told investigators that their brother had been sitting a lot on the camping trip and acting strange on the way home and after they got back. They echoed their parents' recitation of events, Isaiah coming inside from the trip, taking a shower, and lying down, but said he couldn't do any of those things on his own as he kept falling down and they had to hold him up in the shower and get him into bed. Bella Vista police, the town where the family resided, obtained a search warrant for the Torres home the next day. They found blood splatter in the bathroom and even on the walls and ceiling of the master bedroom, and on 15-pound weights in the home, where it would later be noted that Isaiah had fallen and smacked his head. They also found a diamond-shaped poker near the fireplace. Vomit and a stethoscope were found in the bed as well. In a subsequent interview, Cathy continued to claim she did not know what could have happened to her son, and that for a brief time on March 29th, she had left to go to Lowe's, Isaiah being under Torres' care the entire time. She began to lay blame on her husband, admitting to seeing her husband beat Isaiah with his fists, an extension cord, and a belt in the past. And if he cried, he'd be beaten again and needed to learn to be a man. If he bled, she would put Neosporin on it. She admitted to hitting him a few times with the belt, but never leaving any marks. When the autopsy was performed on Isaiah, his cause of death was ruled to be acute peritonitis, inflammation of the lining of the stomach, usually caused by an internal puncture wound. The medical examiner concluded that Isaiah had had something forcefully inserted into his rectum, which caused an intestinal tear, leading to the infection that killed him. It was noted that this could have been treated had he had been given medical attention sooner. The manner of death was ruled as homicide. He also noted that this horrific final trauma happened within 24 hours of the end of his life. The result of his death was from repeated child abuse, of which multiple wounds to his body and head were found to be in various stages of healing. On April 3rd, police obtained a warrant to search the camper that the family had used on their final trip together. They found an area that appeared to be a blood stain. In another round of questioning, Torres finally admitted to the torture he inflicted upon his son in the camper. When Torres caught his son sneaking some cake he wasn't supposed to have, Torres forced a large stick into his anus and made him do squats in the corner, all of which Cathy was witness to. Cathy wasn't satisfied with the pace of her son's squats and forced him lower onto the stick. Horrifyingly, when Torres began to show the detective during the interview how his son was squatting, he began to laugh about it, saying it was so cute at the time. Both parents were arrested and charged with capital homicide, first-degree battery, and sexual assault. As part of an agreement to avoid the death penalty, although she continued to deny that she played any part in her son's death, Cathy pled guilty to homicide and battery charges and is currently serving a life sentence without parole in Newport, Arkansas. In another instance of disillusionment, Cathy said the only reason she pled guilty was to avoid the death penalty because it would be like committing suicide, which is immoral. Mauricio Torres was convicted twice for the abuse and killing of his 6-year-old son. However, the first was overturned on a sentencing technicality, and the second was declared a mistrial when Torres' stepson, Quentin Martin, jumped out of the witness stand and attempted to attack him during sentencing. In February 2023, Torres' third trial began. His daughter, Isaiah's sister, Madison, now a teen, was questioned on the stand and shed further light on this tragic case. She said her home life with Torres and Cathy was not normal, explaining it wasn't a friendly or safe place to live. The teen said Isaiah was treated differently from her and her sister. She remembered Isaiah having to sleep in a cage in a bathroom. The girl claimed her parents would make her guard Isaiah's cage to stop him from escaping and getting food. She said her father got angry at her brother and dragged dragged him in the camper while the family was on their camping trip in Missouri back in 2015. He made Isaiah take off his clothes, and she saw Torres beating him with the stick. She said Torres was the dominant parent, whereas Torres described himself in the police interviews as the follower and his wife as the controlling figure in their relationship. She said her father punished her brother by pulling his teeth with pliers, and Isaiah would be screaming and trying to pull away. She continued in recounting the boy's brutalizations when Isaiah had to stay in a trash bin for about a month. She said at one point she saw her biological parents pour bleach on him. The girl, who asked to refer to her parents as bio mom and bio dad, also told of how Isaiah was so badly burnt by the bleach attack, he had to spend time in the hospital and was delighted by the treatment he received there because he was happy he got to eat real food, watch TV, and sleep in a real bed. Addressing jurors, the girl also told of how she was made to join in the beatings of Isaiah. She explained she did it because she was afraid she might get beat if she didn't. Remember, she was only a year older than Isaiah, who endured all of this by the time he was just 6. Madison said Torres forced Isaiah to drink his urine and eat feces. Although her parents let Isaiah's twin sister and her enjoy home-cooked food and restaurant meals, her brother was usually only fed peanut butter, rice, and beans. The Torreses would also hold birthday parties for their other children, including Isaiah's twin sister, but refused to celebrate his and never bought him presents or cake. Dr. Stephen Erickson, Deputy Chief Medical Examiner for the Arkansas Crime Laboratory, testified that Isaiah's cause of death was anal rectal trauma, which caused the sepsis that led to his death. He elaborated by explaining a contributing factor was chronic child abuse since Isaiah had multiple injuries on his body. He said, "This is one of the worst ones in my career, and I've seen some bad ones." Also during the trial, interviews with Torres were played. Torres told the questioning officer about Cathy's inability to express her feelings or make gestures of love and her lack of a nurturing instinct. He then veered into speculation about whether Isaiah had an undiagnosed condition like hyperglycemia or diabetes that could have been a factor in his death. As another means of distraction, he discussed the boy's problems with female authority, something he noted was an issue for himself as well. He also admitted to his own childhood beatings with a belt at the hand of his father. Although he had previously claimed he only spanked his children, in the video admitted to hitting his son with a belt too. When pressed about whether he had ever struck him with an extension cord, Torres took an extended pause before confessing that he had. He eventually shed more light on the network of trauma inflicted on this family, disclosing that the beatings became a family event in which he, his wife, and his daughters all participated. Torres continued to try and lay blame elsewhere, exclaiming that he fought for his son, and later stated that what happened to his son was accidental. 5 of Torres' stepchildren took the stand during his initial trial, outlining the monstrous abuse they had received from this man as well. In 2004, Torres was investigated for suspicion of sexual assault on his stepdaughter Bailey, who was 4 years old at the time. All charges were dropped though, due to lack of evidence. Another investigation in the early 2000s showed that the state took away 6 children the Torreses were fostering, after which they moved across the state to start over. In February 2023, a jury sentenced Mauricio and Torres to life in prison without parole for murdering his 6-year-old son. He's currently serving in prison in East Arkansas. Madison and Mackenzie were taken into DHS custody and eventually adopted. We've come to the end of this week's case. What do you think? Should Torres have received the death penalty, or will life in prison be the punishment these 2 awful parents deserve? Thanks for tuning in, liking, and subscribing. I'm Brandy. See you next time for another installment of Killer Bites.